Today, we're unraveling a story that honestly sounds like it was ripped straight out of a Hollywood script, but it is a meticulously documented historical event. We are looking at the only unsolved commercial airplane hijacking in American history. Now, while a lot of people tend to focus on the phantom who actually pulled it off, we're going to look at this through a very specific lens: the absolute mystery of the cash he demanded, took, and then seemingly vanished with into thin air. Are you ready? Let's dive right in. $200,000. Just take a second and let that number sink in. That figure is the central character of our entire mystery today. It was the absolute focal point of a daring crime, the object of a massive federal manhunt, and ultimately, the only tangible piece of evidence that ever resurfaced. To really understand how this money just disappeared, we have to go back and look at exactly how it was taken in the first place. All right, let's look at this incredibly tight timeline. The date is November 24th, 1971. It's the day before Thanksgiving. Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 is scheduled for a super short, routine 30-minute hop from Portland to Seattle. But by midnight, one man would hold an entire plane hostage, secure a massive ransom, and vanish into a freezing storm. In just a matter of hours, a mundane holiday commute escalated into a totally unprecedented aviation crisis. So who actually set this all in motion? Well, a man approached the ticket counter and gave the name Dan Cooper. He paid cash for a one-way ticket, and his profile was just completely inconspicuous. Dark suit, black raincoat, sunglasses. He took seat 18C, ordered a bourbon and soda, lit a cigarette, and just sat there. He was unnervingly calm. He looked like just another businessman heading home for the holidays, right? Wrong. Because shortly after takeoff, Cooper casually passes a note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. Now, she assumed it was just a phone number from a lonely passenger, so she slipped it unread right into her pocket. That's when Cooper leaned in and delivered this chilling message. He said, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." The message inside the note was incredibly precise and confident. He was hijacking the airplane. To prove he absolutely wasn't bluffing, Cooper opened his briefcase just a fraction. Inside, Schaffner saw red cylinders, wires, and a battery. It looked exactly like a real bomb. And look, at 10,000 feet up in the air, nobody was going to test whether those cylinders were actually explosives or just road flares. The stakes of this hijacking instantly skyrocketed, and Cooper was now in complete control of the aircraft. With the crew's attention completely captured, Cooper laid out his demands, and they were surprisingly simple but highly calculated. Number one, he wanted his $200,000 in cash. Number two, he wanted 4 parachutes, specifically 2 main and 2 reserve. And 3, he wanted a fuel truck waiting on the tarmac in Seattle to refuel the plane. The Northwest Orient president personally authorized the payment, and immediately the wheels on the ground started turning. Before we go any further, it's absolutely vital to contextualize this ransom. While $200,000 might not sound like a completely world-shattering amount of money to hold an airplane hostage for today, if you adjust that for inflation, it is equivalent to a staggering $1.5 million. This was not a petty theft. This was a major heist in the sky. But I want you to think about the physical logistics of that cash. The FBI had to assemble this money quickly while the plane circled around burning off fuel. They ended up gathering 10,000 unmarked $20 bills. Imagine the sheer weight and volume of 10,000 individual bills. This wasn't a neat little digital wire transfer. This was a heavy, bulky, physical payload that Cooper was going to have to carry with him. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the brilliant secret move the FBI made while they were scrambling to get all that money together. Before handing that heavy canvas bag of cash over to the airline, agents rapidly photographed every single serial number on all 10,000 bills. Cooper had absolutely no idea that his perfectly untraceable ransom was actually a carefully laid trap. So the plane lands in Seattle, the passengers are released, the cash and parachutes are brought on board, and the plane takes off again, heading south. Then, somewhere over the pitch-black Pacific Northwest, Cooper does the unthinkable. Strapped with that heavy bag of cash, he lowers the rear aft stairs of the Boeing 727 and jumps at 10,000 feet into a freezing storm. And remember, his tactical survival gear consisted of a business suit and a pair of slip-on loafers. This brilliantly illustrates one of the absolute strangest contradictions in the entire case. On one hand, we have a meticulous planner. His demands for 4 parachutes made the FBI think he might take a hostage with him, which ensured they wouldn't give him sabotaged gear. Very smart. But on the other hand, we have this wildly reckless escape. Jumping into a freezing mountain storm at night without proper survival gear, that bordered on suicide. Because of that, a lot of investigators were convinced he just couldn't have survived the drop. Yet, the manhunt was massive. Over the following years, the FBI investigated more than 800 suspects. They combed the forests, they interviewed military paratroopers, they tracked down everyone who even remotely fit the description. But out of those 800 suspects, they couldn't find a single confirmation. Cooper and all that cash had completely vanished. For 9 long years, the case went totally cold. That brilliant trap the FBI set with the serial numbers, it yielded absolutely nothing. But then, in February 1980, the money finally makes a dramatic reappearance. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was just digging a fire pit in the sand at a spot called Tina Bar along the Columbia River. His shovel hit something unusual. He had dug up 3 decaying bundles of cash. Now, the cash was in terrible condition. The bills had completely disintegrated over the years in the wet sand, but remarkably, the rubber bands were still holding the bundles together, and the serial numbers were still readable. So the FBI rushes to match the numbers against their master list, and it was a perfect match. This was Cooper's money. To this day, it remains the only physical evidence of the hijacking ever recovered. But here is the craziest part. Out of the $200,000 he jumped with, Brian Ingram only found $5,800. This tiny fraction of the ransom raised far more questions than it answered. I mean, if this was his money, where was the rest of it? And more importantly, how did it get buried under the sand on a riverbank, miles and miles away from his projected drop zone? This crucial discovery literally split investigators into 2 camps. Theory 1 suggests Cooper died in the jump or drowned, and over 9 years, the Columbia River just naturally washed a few bundles of his cash downstream, burying them in the sand at Tina Bar. But Theory 2 suggests the cash was intentionally buried there, meaning Cooper survived the jump, at least long enough to reach the riverbank and hide or maybe lose a portion of his loot. The frustrating part? Neither theory could be proven. The FBI kept the case open for decades. They utilized modern DNA and forensic technology as it became available, constantly hoping the remaining $194,200 would just pop up in circulation. But it never did. Finally, in July 2016, after 45 years, the FBI officially closed the D.B. Cooper case to redirect their resources to active threats. But the legacy he leaves behind is just unprecedented. He is the only unidentified hijacker in U.S. history. There's no confirmed body. There's no confirmed identity. There's no confirmed fate. Every single year, amateur investigators still comb the forests and riverbanks of the Pacific Northwest, looking for a scrap of parachute, a bone, or that rotting canvas bag that held the rest of the fortune. He remains exactly what he was the moment he stepped out of that plane into the storm, a complete mystery. Which brings us to the ultimate question. What actually happened to the remaining $194,200 and the phantom hijacker? Did he live to spend it quietly? Or is it still out there, decomposing in the deep woods of Washington? If you have a theory about this missing cash, drop it in the comments below. And if you want to understand more unsolved mysteries exactly like this one, make sure to subscribe to The Explainer.